So IT services for this organization was about a 500-person organization. The IT services had your help desk, your desk side support, and then your infrastructure and cloud support. So tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. When I stepped in, the department had the unfortunate nickname of the Helpless desk.
If you're ready to unlock momentum, you're in the right place. I'm Aaron Kopel, the Momentum Locksmith, and this is where CIOs come to grow. Welcome to another episode of Unlocking Momentum. Today, here with Earl Shaw, CIO for Renaissance Benefits. And really excited to have Earl here because I've known Earl for more than 20 years. It's probably been like close to 23 years, something like that. We spent some time together at a company called Thompson, which many of us will know as RCA brand, consumer electronics. And so I've known Earl for quite a while, and I'm very excited to have him here and share some of the experiences with us as a CIO at several different companies, but again, most recently at Renaissance Benefits.
Well, Aaron, thanks for having me on the show today.
So kind of curious, as you've come to this role, what are some of those key points along your career that sort of brought you to here?
Yeah, so there's a couple. I would say maybe 3. First one is really when I was a child, playing strategy games with my dad. My dad and I, a lot of times how we would connect would be playing games, and so that could be like chess. We loved playing chess, backgammon, whereas anything with some type of strategy. And what that really taught me, at that time, was just having fun with dad. But what I realized much later, what that taught me was critical thinking. Looking at all the information, evaluating, determining what my next move and the move after that and the move after that was going to be. And so that was important, is creating that critical thinking and looking at problems and how to dissect them and how to solve them. The second one came from my mother. And so one of the things she told me was to treat others as you'd want to be treated. And I've lived by that principle, especially as a leader, is how would I want to be led? And that's how I try to share with my team. That's how I try to work with my business partners. I want them to be open. I want them to be curious, the same as I would be. So it's really important for me to take that skill and use that every day of my life. Now, the third one, we're going to go to more of a work professional item. And that's really, anytime an opportunity presents itself, give it a try. Okay. And, so what do I mean by that? So, years ago, this is probably going on 20 years back, actually back when at Thompson I had the opportunity to lead an integration team. I knew absolutely nothing about integrations. But I said, yeah, let me give it a try, and tried it and learned a lot from it. Years later, I had the opportunity to lead a support team. Guess what? I didn't know anything about support, but let me try it. And I learned a lot about it. And same thing, infrastructure. I spent several years learning infrastructure and learning how to lead an infrastructure team. You take all those pieces together, and every one of those just kind of expanded my knowledge, taught me how to lead differently, how to lead better, hopefully. So by the time I became a CIO, almost 5 years ago, I led application teams, data teams, integration teams, support teams, project management, BRM teams, facilities, infrastructure. I had all those pieces, which really gave me a more of a holistic view of how things connected. And I think that was absolutely critical. So if someone presents you an opportunity, give it a try. You're going to learn.
Yeah. That's a key factor as a leader, right? Keep learning. And I can imagine, like, going back to your first point there about the strategy games. I mean, playing different games, you have to learn the rules and also where the boundaries of the rules are, right? As you go into new situations, new opportunities like that, each one of those situations, even though they all have to do something with technology and IT, there's sort of different rules or maybe different metrics or different boundaries that you have to play within. And sometimes it's questioning where the boundaries are, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great point there. So understanding those boundaries and also observing your opponent. So you get into card games and things like that, and most people have some type of tell. And so observing that will also give you a good insight as to what their next move's going to be. And you understand their motivation. They're trying to capture this piece of territory, whatever it is. Understanding that allows you to plan your strategy better.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And especially in business, it's a lot about, trying to help understand what their motivations are, to your point, and really understand what's going to satisfy their needs, right? And sometimes it's unspoken needs that they haven't figured out or maybe aren't ready to share. And it's trying to uncover those. And a lot of that's trust building, right?
It is.
Really get into that point of be able to have the real conversation, right? They might, especially on the business side, I'm sure they might come running with their hair on fire with some problem, and it's trying to put that fire out, but then get to the deeper issue of why did the fire start and all that kind of thing. So
yeah, it's understanding the why. It's asking that question. Okay. So let's solve the immediate need. Now let's take a step back and let's figure out the root cause. What caused it in the first place, and how do we prevent it in the future? It's great to be super fast in solving problems, but it's even better to not have them happen at first. And, that's the goal. So it's kind of like if you think about your electric company. If your electric goes out, you're never like, hey, it only took 10 minutes to get it back on. It's like, why did it take 10 minutes to get it back? It's the same idea. Let's keep the problem from happening in the first place.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good point. Probably a good segue into next part of our conversation, which is about, thinking about a time when you had to really face a challenge to try to unlock that momentum in the organization. And so I know you've got a topic that's kind of related there. So kind of curious to hear about that. So so you want to dive into that?
Absolutely. And, so I mentioned a few minutes ago talking about had the opportunity to take over an infrastructure team, which I knew little to nothing about. And it was like my boss at the time, our CIO, said, hey, do you want to take on this opportunity? Absolutely. Let me give it a try. Okay. And so I took over an IT services area. And so IT services for this organization was about a 500-person organization. The IT services had your help desk, your desk side support, and then your infrastructure and cloud support. So tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. When I stepped in, the department had the unfortunate nickname of the Helpless desk. People didn't like calling them. They knew it was going to be long. It was going to be painful. They had over 200 open service tickets in the queue, just waiting for responses. Okay. So I was like, wow, what can we do? So the first thing I did was I met with every person on the team and asked questions to understand the situation. I also reached out to different business areas and asked them questions to understand. And so once I did all that, what I realized pretty quickly was it wasn't that we didn't have the right people, that they weren't working hard. They were working really, really, really hard. It was a bad process. Okay. And so we had to change the process. So Aaron, you talked a little bit about this in your book, is, look at the process, explore it, re-examine it, tear it apart, and rebuild it for a better process. And so once we figured that out, we were like, okay, how do we do that? And so first thing we did was we started taking all these tickets. So let's group them together. And we said, okay, what is the root cause of these items? Let's solve the root cause. So now we started having less tickets coming in, less water coming into the boat. We introduced customer surveys for every closed ticket. And this was a scale of 1 to 5. So anytime its score was below 4, the leader of our tier 1 organization would reach out to that person to find out what we could do better. We then incorporated that feedback to continue to improve the process. We created an express lane for quick fixes. And so what I mean by this is similar to going to your grocery store. I only have 2 items. Do I want to wait in the line where the 4 people have their carts full, or do I want to go here and be in and out in 5 minutes? So we did the same thing with tickets. If you have a ticket that could be solved quickly, let's send you through the express lane. And for those longer tickets, they would be in the same old queue. Okay, so now we had better service time for people. We also sat there and started saying, okay, what can we do to move the ability to solve problems up earlier in the process? So what the old process was, tier 1 would simply receive it. They would send it off to tier 2, who would go, either they could do it or they'd have to pass it on to tier 3. So each one of those handoffs, of course, caused delays. So we said, okay, why don't we just allow tier 1 to solve more of the problems? And therefore, again, quicker resolution. We also had the leaders from each of those tiers meet on a regular basis. At first it was daily, then it was weekly, to talk about how can we continue to improve service. So all those pieces together created something pretty tremendous. By the time we left, we were getting service scores of 4.93 out of 5. Our open tickets went from over 200 to around 25. And so, you take this information, and it's one of the things I've learned in my life, which was, guess what? Real improvement comes from process innovation, empowerment, and this crazy thing called listening. Okay. Listen to what the real problem is, ask those questions. And so I've taken that and I've used that throughout my career, which is, okay, how can we be more innovative in our solutions? Let's not look at what it was, but let's see how we can actually do it better.
It's a really good point. And I like that listening part, especially where what you said, you were doing the surveys before, so hard to say what it was before, but if they're called the helpless desk, it was probably not great, right?
Right.
And then getting up to that 4.9 plus score, really good. A lot of that comes from going out and talking to those people that weren't satisfied and, what can we do better? What can we do differently? And adapt the process. So, have the leaders managers meet daily and then weekly as things probably tame down. Probably a really good opportunity for them to take some of that feedback and act upon it, right? Not just once a quarter, once a year, but like in real time probably. So
Yeah, it was way too easy in the past. So, that person just is difficult. So they always give a bad score. Let's understand why. Okay, let's talk. Let's see what we can do better. Because, maybe their 3 is now a 4 because of the work we did. Okay, and that 4 may translate to everyone else as a 5. But let's understand. Let's have those conversations, those tough conversations with those individuals, to find out what we can do better and continue to improve.
Yep. Yeah, and then I imagine a lot of that then builds some of that personal connection out to those business partners, and then they understand better that there are people on the other end of it, right, that are not just trying to do a bad job, but they're trying to do well and maybe stuck in a bad process. And so we're trying to fix that. So can you help us help you by giving us some feedback and help us understand how to do better and what the root cause might be coming from. And just like, a lot of it's pulling those people in as much, they're trying to do their own, work and job and that kind of stuff. As they have help desk issues, it's sort of like throwing up a flag and saying, hey, I've got a problem here, but how can you help us help you not have that problem ever again, right?
Right.
And so if you can participate with us this time and get the root cause, that it probably won't happen again, right?
You hit on a key point there is communication, okay? And it's one of the messages I always share with my team is you may be working really hard on some problem, just, going crazy working on it, but if you don't communicate to the person who reported the problem that you're working at, as far as they know, it's a black hole, okay? And so that communication is critical, and everyone's more receptive. If you're sharing, hey, I'm working on this, I'm running these issues, but I'm continuing to work on it, is much better than waiting 4 days and not hearing anything and then it's solved. And so it's important to communicate. And then when you're done doing that, communicate a little bit more. Because we're all people, we're all trying to do our best. I truly believe every person I work with is trying to do their absolute best. It's just, how do you connect through that communication?
Yeah. That's a really good assumption to make, I think, as a leader. Until there's a reason not to, like it's a good idea to assume that people are trying their best, right? And they're just working inside a system. And as leaders, it's oftentimes the system, the process. That's the part that we need to address, because people are going to be working as hard as they can, trying to do as well as they can within that process environment. So really addressing that's the big thing.
Yeah, I agree completely. And you think about, so as AI continues to impact us, same thing. Okay, it's going to come to communication. And so that's one of the big things we're putting, a lot heavier focus on in 26 is around AI and continue to expand on that. And part of that is going to be around communication, change management. And because it's different, it's going to cause jobs to be different. That's okay. We just need to communicate that. And we need to be very diligent in the change management aspect of that and how things are going to change. And so you cannot focus enough on communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. To your point, even as technology advances with all the great things that AI can do, it still comes down to people and communicating well and understanding what's important. So that's great.
Yeah. There's 2 things you can solve better than a face-to-face conversation.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, speaking of that, so getting into more of what we call in this show, your hot take, I think that kind of leads into that a little bit as well, which, there's a lot of push in the industry. I just saw a post, I think, from Elon Musk maybe a day or 2 ago on X, about, do people really need to go to college anymore because there's so much technology, so much AI advancement, things like that? Can people just skip that part and just jump straight into a really successful career, especially in technology? And so, speaking of communication and that kind of stuff, I'm kind of curious to dive into that with you and your hot take here.
Yeah. So my, as a technician, my hot take may be kind of interesting, but in today's world, being a successful technician really requires more than just programming and analytical skills. AI can do your basic programming for you. And so technical courses, love them. What do? They teach you how to break down complex problems, recognize patterns, apply logic. But that's only part of the real equation, okay? If to truly be well-rounded as an individual, as a technologist, as a leader, you have to be able to think critically. You have to communicate effectively. And the type of classes, type of skills where you've learned that from are liberal arts courses. Okay. What? Liberal art courses? Why? Because, what do they teach you? They teach you how to evaluate information objectively. They ask the why, the how questions, challenge assumptions, be polite, but challenge assumptions, and then make reasoned decisions from that. The other part of that you learn from liberal art classes is the ability to tell a story. Okay. And so when you're trying to sell a new technology project, you really have to sell a story. Technology can be really complicated, What you don't want to do is sit there and go in this room and throw a bunch of acronyms out because everyone's like, what are they talking about? I don't even understand what they're talking about. So you really have to paint a picture. It's a lot like if you're ever going to go on a road trip with your kids. Okay. You can say, hey, kids, get in the car and we're going to be there in 10 hours and not tell them anything else. Well, that's going to be the worst 10 hours of your life. Or you could tell them, hey, we're going to get in the car. We're going to drive down to Disney. And the first day we're there, we're going to, go to Cinderella's castle and have breakfast and et cetera, et cetera. You paint what that picture is. Now there's excitement. And it's the same thing. It's the ability to really take a story, translate it to terms that people understand so they can get excited about it. So if you want to be a really good technician, take that analytical skills that you learn, but also then add the critical thinking. Be curious, ask why, ask how, and be able to share a story. I think those skills combined together will be the skills that technicians need going into the future.
Yeah, I like that. It's a really good, important factor. Like the how part, you got to know that, right? So the technologist part and be able to solve the problem. But adding on top of that, the what and helping understand, what the problem is and what are we going to do about it? What's the most important problem to solve, right? So not just be able to do it, but, solving them in maybe a priority order. But then the higher level thing, like you said, the story really comes into the why and really understanding that bigger picture and be able to explain that well. And, so many times, I've both seen this together when you get technologists in a room with business people and start, like you said, throwing out acronyms and, talking about ones and zeros and all that kind of stuff. And, the eyes glaze over the business person. They just don't care about that stuff. Like they assume you know what you're talking about from the technology standpoint. What they need to understand is more of the surrounding aspects of the why and the what. What's it going to do for me? What are the benefits? What are the values? All those kind of things. And then, also, when's it going to get done? That's also a good question.
They occasionally care about that also.
Yeah. But then we can talk to you about, it sounds like what you've got is a bunch of problems here. There's maybe like 10 different things if we break it down. What's the most important one for you to solve? And let's talk about why that is, right? Because and then after you've solved the first 5, they might say the other 5, not the first 5 are solved. These other 5 are less important than this other issue I just came up with. And that's where you get into a lot of that, breaking the work down and agile thinking about iterative and incremental problem solving. So
yeah, that's exactly the case. And you ask those questions and you're like, it takes me, it's these 7 steps I have to follow. And can we automate those 7 steps? So why do you do those 7 steps? Because we've always done those 7 steps. Well, what if we just get rid of those 7 steps? Great idea. So it's taking that time to really have that conversation and truly understanding is going to help you solve it for sure. Absolutely. So storytelling is, I'm a big fan of metaphors and to really connect to things. And so, like APIs, I'll have people, we need APIs. And you know what an API is? I have no idea what an API is, but they're times we need. Okay. So I'll use this, analogy of basically going into a restaurant, ordering off a menu, and because everyone's done it. And so that's really important, is to be able to create those things that everyone has actually experienced, because now they understand it in their terms and they're more well-rounded because of it.
Yeah. It's a really good example. It makes you think of, some of the best economists I've encountered. So going to business school, taking econ classes, or if you've ever read Freakonomics, that's really technical stuff you get into. But we all remember it because of the stories that come with it, right? The really good economists are able to tell the story and sort of put it in context like that, like the analogy of a menu. So that's really powerful to help people really get their mind around it. And it also sticks with you, right? And then I think they're much more willing participants in that business partner relationship because they know they can come talk to you. They're going to understand what's going on. They're going to be able to have a good discussion about it and share their point of view. And you're going to share yours in terms we can all understand through those kind of analogies. I think that's super powerful. Really makes the technology leader, much more effective in that, because we're not just talking about ones and zeros and techie stuff. It really is engaging with the business and being that business partner. So,
and quite honestly, that's what's fun. That's the fun part of the job, having those conversations, working together to see how you can solve a problem. It goes all back to that whole puzzle solving that I like to do.
Yeah. Different kind of aspect of that technical puzzle is that piece of it. Right. So pretty cool. One more thing, just thinking about, you brought up AI and some of the things that are coming up for us in the future here. Kind of curious, what do you see on the horizon here for this year as we step into 2026?
Well, AI is going to continue to drive. It's going to continue to change. I'll age myself, not a little bit here, but it's similar to when Google really came out and doing web searches. Okay, it's a whole new way of thinking, a whole new way of how do you do your job, and AI is going to say it's the same thing. People will adopt it, if we give them the ability to learn, to explore, to experiment. We did something wonderful with Copilot. We had Copilot when we introduced that to the organization, Microsoft Copilot. One of the things we really did was we gave it to people in a pilot, and then we would meet with them every week, and all we would do is share stories, okay, about what worked or what didn't work, things they tried, and what that really spawned was different ideas and different approaches. And so as we take AI and we continue to expand, it's going to be the same thing. Really, how does it impact your job today? Because your jobs could be different. That's okay. That's all right. We'll teach you how it can be different, and you'll be very successful at it.
Yeah, it really becomes a great tool, right? Not just for problem solving, but also for leadership. And that's something I think there's a lot of still inside the box thinking about how to use AI as like a question and answer tool. But I think going, a few steps beyond that is starting to think outside the box about what I kind of jokingly sometimes say is using AI against itself, which is starting to ask it, what should I do with you in this context, right? And it starts giving you ideas, then you can feed back into it. And you're really having more, instead of just a question answer conversation, it's more of a dialogue, right, with the AI, and it really coming up to, even better thoughts and ideas about what problems to even think about or talk about or ask about. And so I think there's, just a lot on the horizon about how to expand that thinking and get outside the box on how to use it. So
yeah, I agree completely. AI is my best research assistant. I can do, hey, tell me more about this, and I'll work something else and come back, and there'll be some stuff, and then we'll talk about it. And what about this? How about this? And just again, I love being curious, and so AI is probably almost a drug to me because it feeds that. It's really just the ability to explore. It just opens up the wealth of knowledge that years ago when I was a kid, if you wanted knowledge, you had to go to the library, go to the card catalog. I'm not sure if they have those anymore, but and find out where the book was that you wanted and hope that it was actually in at that time. Today, all that information is at your fingertips. It's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, in seconds, right? So yeah, it's changed again quite a bit, which was exciting. And I see, a lot of companies dabbling, or some are thinking about dabbling with it. They're just kind of still hesitant, not quite sure, what the rules are inside the company in terms of policies and data protection and things like that. And so, you'll see a lot of companies that are I guess, inching more towards that. And some have gone, all in, and you can sort of see where that advancement is going with those that have gone all in. They're trying a lot of experiments and seeing, different ways to use it. And I think that's, helping them just advance a lot faster. So
yeah, I agree completely. It goes, almost back to that service desk example I used before. So you take AI and you're able to change a process or automate a process and save capital there. You can then invest that in more, and and then it continues, and it suddenly becomes a rock rolling down a hill and keeps picking up momentum. That's exactly where we want to be with it.
Yeah, it's really, really powerful, and I think to your point, then it opens up a lot of business opportunities because technology becomes easier to deal with, or you can get things earlier, faster, cheaper, all that kind of stuff, and opens up more opportunities. And I think a big part of what we talk about these days is, especially the CIO becoming more of that business partner to help guide the business on how to use those things, where they don't need to make requests to the IT department anymore. It's more about how do we go out and help you do some of the stuff for yourself, because the tools are there. It's just understanding how to use them effectively and safely, probably. Right?
Yeah, it's exactly the case. And when their focuses really in 26 is around really AI education. And so I know Warren spoke a little about this in the podcast you had with him, but it's to really speak about the educational aspect of it, and to truly have a program we're putting together across the entire organization for awareness, so they can learn more about it and how to use it, just so they're more comfortable with it.
So Earl, I'd love to hear a little bit about your current role and just sort of what brought you to now.
So as far as Renaissance Benefits, I've been the CIO there we'll be coming on 5 years in May. Time just flies, quite honestly, when you're having fun. And I have absolutely loved my job there. I love what I do. My team's really responsible for building and maintaining the technology foundation that empowers every person at Renaissance to excel, deliver exceptional service. Every person, every day, interacts with technology. It's our team's responsibility to make sure that works. And so, how do we do that? So we achieve that by always enabling, continuously optimizing our technology ecosystem. So enterprise applications, your data platforms, your automation, your integrations, your infrastructure, and of course, your cybersecurity. All those pieces play together to really create what that ecosystem is. Our focus is to really ensure adaptable, scalable operations, drive efficiency, support growth, enhance profitability for our internal and external customers. So one of the important things I always explain to my team is every person in our organization and outside of our organization is either a customer or a potential customer, because we service every one of them. Okay. And the cool part about the job, the cool part about technology, I really think is to really be good at technology, you need to understand every piece of the organization and how they interconnect. And so a lot of times I'll have conversations with our interns when they come to the organization, and ask them, what are you interested in doing? Well, I'm interested in this piece. Okay, well, how does that connect to these other pieces of the organization? Because to truly be a good technologist, you need to understand everything that goes into it, everything that comes out of it, and how it all connects.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's like a great company. It's not every company where you have that opportunity to serve your own internal customers as external customers and vice versa. So it's a really good opportunity. So Earl, we usually wrap up our session with some rapid fire questions here. So 3 questions for you real quick. Our discussions always talks about a lot of the technology side of things and that life as a CIO. But kind of curious, what's your biggest passion outside of work?
So there's really a couple passions outside of work. First one is spending time with family. I absolutely love spending time with my family, and that could be going out to dinner at a restaurant. It could be playing games. We're big into playing games, going to a concert, or just hanging out by the pool. It's just spending that time together, connecting, hearing what's going on with their lives is absolutely a total passion. The second one is working on puzzles. So my wife, Michelle, and I will spend a lot of time on the weekend, have a nice glass of wine, working on a jigsaw puzzle. And if you think about it, working on those puzzles really is something that helps drive to me, part of what I enjoy about my job. Because when you're thinking about solving a puzzle, what do you have to do? You have to think of the bigger picture. You have to see how everything connects together. It requires a little bit of patience to put it together. And when it's all said and done, you get the short picture and you reach your goal. So that's how I spend every day. My job and my life and working on my job is solving puzzles. So I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Yeah, it's a good one, and something of course you can do for a long time. It
Yes.
keeps you sharp, and you can challenge yourself in different ways with those. I'm sure different levels of puzzles, and I've heard some people turn the puzzle pieces over and do it with the just the backside. That's really hard. I'm sure I've never done that.
Yeah, it sounds like too much suffering, really.
So super hard, but yeah, that's cool. I agree. So puzzles, and of course family. I mean, that's important. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? So connecting with people, as you said, and you've got some great kids, and seeing them back, I'm sure, for the holidays is great. So yeah.
You really have to have that balance between work and family. And I really try to, with my teams, make sure they keep that balance is because that's why you're working, for yourself, but also for your family. So you have to have that balance in life.
Yeah, it's a really good point. That's great. Well, second rapid fire question here. If you could have a coffee and chat with anyone alive or dead, who would it be?
All right. Well, I'm going to turn this on you a little bit, I think, and I'm going to go a fictional character. Yeah, Sherlock Holmes. So why Sherlock Holmes? So if you think about his skills in solving crime, a lot of those skills are something that every day we use in leadership. Okay, so what are those skills that you think about it? So observation. Every day we're looking at patterns. What are things that are missed, and how do they connect? Critical thinking. We use it every day in strategic decision making. Adaptability. So you guys probably heard about the little thing called agile. So what is that? You're adapting. There's new information coming to you. You pivot, you change course, and you have to be very adaptable. Empathy, hearing what the other person, so what is their real action behind? What's the behavior behind the action? Why are they doing it? And understanding that. And then finally, the last piece is really storytelling and creating that vision, that picture, and connecting everything together in a compelling narrative so that you're really getting your point across. So in our world where things are changing all the time, being curious, using your mind with critical thinking, having a real understanding, absolutely timeless leadership skills. So tying those together to me is be interesting to hear how Sherlock actually used those skills when he was solving cases.
Oh, that's great. I love it. I love the explanation of it as well. And that first one, it brought me back to a workshop I went to one time where I talked a lot about observation and the way people make assumptions about observation. So that's a really important one, because we infer a lot of things that may or may not be real, right? And so just really like using that strict observation skill and just being logical about it. For example, Like I might feel like you're mad, but what I'm observing, I can't observe that you're mad, but I can observe that your brow furrows and,
Right.
you're, things like that. And you look a little tense, but I can't know that you're mad because that's inside your head, right? So it's the observation part without trying to make assumptions, and that can help us be better leaders. Really, not making those assumptions, taking things for granted. So
Yeah, I agree. I had a coach, and it was probably, must have been 15, 20 years ago. And I was like, hey, every time I talk to this person, they act this way. And they're like, what? Well, why are they? I was like, I don't know. They're like, did you ever ask them? That's one thing. It's a lot of value for those who've had a coach in the past is to because sometimes it just things you just for whatever reason you don't think about, and they're like they ask this common question, and you're like, no, I never thought about that, and it's so different than working with your partners across the business areas. Sometimes just asking that outsider question makes people think differently, So it's really, really, really important to be curious in that way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, being curious and asking the question, right, to your point, and it can definitely change the trajectory of a conversation and a relationship with your business partners as well. Like I'm sure you've been around, enough of those situations to see that happen many times, I'm sure. So
yeah, it's one of the principles I have with my team is to be curious, ask why. So nothing, drives me crazier than someone coming in, we're doing this. Well, why are you doing that? Well, that's because we've always done it. But that's not an answer. Okay. Let's pull that back a little bit and let's talk through that and understand what that is, because there may be a different way of doing it we just haven't thought about before. So you have to be curious and ask those type of questions.
Yeah, that's a really good point. All right. Well, our last rapid fire question, what do you want to be remembered for? And we talk about this oftentimes is like, what do you want printed on your tombstone kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it actually will go back to a little bit of what we talked about on the first rapid fire question. So again, I love solving puzzles. So, if it would be a puzzle master maybe or a puzzle solver, because again, I absolutely enjoy, I love that. That's why I love my job, is because it's solving puzzles. It's using technology to solve business problems. It's always looking for what is that answer and helping people come to a conclusion to really paint what that picture is. And so that's, whether that's in the work, whether it's in personal life, give me a challenge. I love trying to solve challenges. I love helping other people try to solve challenges. That's truly one of my real passions.
Yeah, nice. That's a good driver. It keeps us on our toes and it keeps us always curious and hungry. So, yeah,
yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks, Earl. Appreciate that. Just to give a few highlights here, I think of what we heard today is a lot about the idea of problem solving is great. And it's a lot of passion for, especially a lot of us in IT. And, I'm that way as well. I love doing puzzles and all kinds of different logic puzzles and, board games and things like that. It's always fun because that's just sort of how my brain works. Sounds like Earl, you might be the same way, sort of that like engineering and problem solving mindset. But really, adding on to that, the ability to communicate effectively, critical thinking, really communication with, business partners and, beyond work, with everyone else out there in the world, family and, coworkers, but also family, and then people just out in the world as you interact with them, right? Just be able to be effective in that kind of communication just makes you a more well-rounded person, and probably more effective in everything, right? Be able to tell stories and use analogies and all those kind of aspects really come into play. So it's just continuous learning, continuous communication, and a lot of it's being transparent and thinking outside the box and challenging assumptions, right? Especially as things continue to change really rapidly here, they have been for the last couple of years, and it's not going to slow down. It's only going to get faster. And so just continuing to adapt and learn and communicate, be transparent. I think it helps everyone sort of figure out how to work together effectively and come to better outcomes. So a great conversation, and I think a few highlights there. So anything else to add there, Earl?
I think you really covered it well. So, stay curious, keep learning, focus in communication. That's something it took me a while and a lot of reading, coaching to realize just how important and critical communication is. And so just keep focusing on it. If I were to, when I shared earlier about interns and stuff, and one of the things was when communication is to them, they're like, what classes should I take? Go take a speech class. Go take a public speaking class. You'll do wonders for your ability, because you can have the greatest ideas in the world, but if you can't communicate them effectively, no one's going to hear them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. Speech class, creative writing, those kind of things that you wouldn't normally take maybe as a technologist, like a hardcore programmer, but man, super effective, right? Get you to think a little bit differently, right? How to communicate. It's a good point. Really good point. Well, Earl, as we wrap up, what's the best way to connect with you? So, people hear this podcast and maybe want to follow up on some of the points. What's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is an absolute wonderful way. And, send me a message. I love meeting new people. I love learning from them, and I'm always there to help. So if anyone ever needs any assistance or thoughts or just sharing stories, but please reach out.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And you post pretty frequently on LinkedIn, and always happy to network and meet new people. So that's great. So yeah, great way to connect with Earl on LinkedIn. And we'll share that in the notes. Any other references to books, website, podcasts, anything else you'd like to share with the audience as well?
Sure. I read a great book recently called Unlocking Momentum. Mr. Kopel. So it was really a very enjoyable book. The nice part about it was a lot of the things in there were lessons I've learned through life. And, so it's almost like a cheat sheet for those who maybe haven't had those experiences yet. So thank you for publishing that. Great book. What that also then led me on, because Amazon does pretty good job of recommending things, was The Science of Scaling by Benjamin Hardy. And so I've just started reading that one, but what it talks about is setting the impossible goal. Okay. And so similar to what you talked about was if you have this goal that's out there that just can't be achieved, guess what? Well, it can be achieved, but what you're going to have to do is really reanalyze everything you do and strip it down to the critical pieces that you need to do to be able to reach that goal.
Oh, that's great. I've checked that out. That sounds awesome. Like that's a really good mindset to have, especially when you're trying to achieve something amazing, right? So
yes, exactly.
Rethinking all the assumptions too. That's beautiful. All right. Well, Earl, thanks so much for being on the podcast here on Unlocking Momentum. It's really been great having a conversation with you and hearing some of your insights. I think that's really helpful for some of the listeners out there, and hopefully they'll take away a few good nuggets and gems that sort of change their thinking a little bit and help them be more effective. So thank you so much, Earl.
Aaron, thanks for hosting these. I love them.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, well, thanks. Thanks for tuning in to Unlocking Momentum. If today's conversation sparked ideas or gave you a new way to think about leadership, check out our past episodes and resources. Don't forget to follow and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you'd like to connect with me, Aaron Kopel, the Momentum Locksmith, you'll find the link in the show notes.